Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my review of the latest release by Malaysian microbrand Revelot. You know I'm all about the price, I just can't help it, and Revelot offer some of the best prices you'll find for the style of watch on offer. In the middle of next week they launched their latest release, the Mecha-Dromo, which is a very attractive racing style chronograph with sapphire crystal, a SEA-GULL movement, an intricate dial and handset, a rally style leather strap, and a great selection of colours with prices starting at under $200 US. If you want the same specifications for less money, you're gonna have to look at AliExpress. There are no other micro brands offering this type of value. Now, there is a flip side to that, which I'll discuss later, so make sure you stick around till the end of the video. Now, you saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by Revelot. I will therefore of course leave a link to their website in the description of the video. The Mecha-Dromo goes live on their site next Tuesday, 27th of August. It's a short pre-order. They anticipate delivering all watches in October, so you only have to wait around 2 months for them. And numbers of each piece are strictly limited. There's only 25 of some colour versions available, for example. Let's get on with it. And let's start by looking at the packaging, which is, well, it's all right. You got to remember these are less than $200, and at that price you honestly don't want particularly fancy packaging because you want the money to have been spent on the watch. It's a decent sized box with space for 2 watches. Each watch comes with a 2-year warranty, by the way. Now, the 2 they sent me are both final prototypes, which are 99% representative of the final product. There may be a couple of tiny colour changes, but nothing of any real consequence. So what do you get for $200 then? Well, you get a really good looking, bright, colourful and rather intricately designed racing chronograph. They sent me 2 to have a look at, the Le Mans Blue, which by the way has a fully loomed dial, and the black and orange Bonfire. I must admit I do rather like the Bonfire version. That's the one on my wrist today. Not only have they used complementary colours, but it's also the cheapest of all of the versions that are available. So what are all of the versions then? Well, let's do them Noah's Ark style 2x2. And let's start with the classic black, which is pretty self-explanatory, and Bonfire, which you'll see plenty of over the next 10 minutes. Moving on to the full lume Panda dial and what they call Racing Storm Blue, which is a navy blue with red accents. If you haven't been looking at the prices so far, it's $189 USD for the regular versions, $209 for the full lume dials and DLCs, and $229 for the full lume dial with DLC. Red Wing Blue and Le Mans White offer 2 different colour combinations and permutations, again both for $189. The Le Mans Blue, which I have today, and a Petrol Teal DLC. Now that one has more than a whiff of Mercedes AMG Patronus IWC about it. The petrol heads watching will know exactly what I mean. And finally 2 DLC choices. Yellow Superluminova DLC, again with full lume dial, or Blackout DLC, which is the plainest of all of the colour versions, just using black, white and grey. There's also a bunch of strap choices with each, as you can see. Check the Revelot website on Tuesday for more details. Now, all watches feature the same basic set of dimensions and specifications regardless of colour version, those being 41.5mm in diameter. Now that is a good size for a chrono. 12.2mm thick with a 47.5 lug to lug. Once you push north of 40mm diameter, that kind of opens up the possibility of 22mm lug width, and indeed that's what they've gone for in this case. Weight as supplied on the rally leather is 82 grams. Crystal is boxed double dome sapphire with a heap of purple blue AR if you hadn't already spotted it. And water resistance is 100 meters despite only having a push-pull crown. The movement in the back, I said it was a SEA-GULL, it's a VK63 Mecha Quartz. Now the 63 is one of the most feature-packed of the Mecha Quartz range, featuring as it does 3 sub-registers and a date complication. 1 push of the top pusher to start, 1 push of the top pusher to stop, 1 push of the bottom pusher to reset as per normal. Now the register at the 3 is the classically useless 24-hour sub-register. At 6 we have a small second complication, and at 9 it is the chrono timer, the 63 being capable of timing up to 60 minutes at 1/5 of a second intervals, because that central chronograph hand ticks 5 times per second. Revelot have also squeezed in a date complication down there at the 6 o'clock. It does look slightly awkward, I'll admit, but for some people a date is a must, and the chosen font is designed to look like the numbers found on the side of vintage racing cars, apparently. And the Caseback is worth a look. It's a classic wire spoke racing wheel with the Revelot logo incorporated neatly into the centre, and a spec sheet incorporated neatly around the outer edge of the wheel. Roughly 3-year battery life from these movements, by the way, and the usual quartz standard plus or minus 15 seconds per month accuracy. The case is mostly brushed and very nicely done throughout. Despite the modern colour palettes, there's also a decidedly retro vibe to this one because of those bullhorn lugs. Aluminium bezel inserts on all of these, by the way, with the tachymeter gradings angled nicely to meet that piece of boxed double dome sapphire. There is just a touch of high polish in the gap between the two lugs, and flipping it around to the other side, you can see a couple of stainless steel chrono pushers and a nice grippy 6mm crown with the Revelot logo in the middle, which is the 14-pointed Malaysian Federal Star, if you hadn't already guessed. Overall, the finish is simple, but the case does feel nice and solid. Now, the rally straps are colour matched to the dials. All stitching is reasonable, they're quick release, and they're nicely embossed. Being a 22mm with that 41.5mm diameter case, you do need a little bit of thickness. But as you can see here, it's one of these straps where the perforations don't go all the way through. Now, that does mean you get more colour matching, but you don't actually get the breathing, which was kind of the point of the perforations in a rally strap in the first place. The substantial buckle is mostly brushed, but it does have a high polish chamfer, and there are the customary double retainers. The straps are okay, if not outstanding. But let's switch lenses and look at the dials and handsets, and they look great, not just because of the use of colour, but also because of the use of texture. The main surface on this bonfire version anyway has got a pronounced rough matte finish that almost mimics the rubber composite desk mat that I shoot on. It's a moulded dial, so the Revelot brand name, logo and model name are moulded in. The 3 sub-registers are slightly recessed, but the indices are then applied on top. They're kind of standard size wedges, apart from at the 3 and 9 where small squares are used to accommodate the subdials. And the Mechadromo features a big old handset, does it not? Brushed silver tapering to a squared off tip rather than a rounded tip or a point, and both the hour hand and the minute hand are nicely chunky. They also feature a bit of colour matching at the innermost edge closest to the pinion, right down the middle. Legibility is often a real challenge on a chrono because of their complexity, and to an extent Revelot are only adding to that problem by using 2, 3, even 4 different colours on the horizontal subdials. But they make up for that by slapping a big old handset on top of them. Now, lume, if you were paying attention earlier on, which of course you were, weren't you? You'd have heard me say that the Le Mans Blue version had a full lume dial, whereas the Bonfire one does not, hence the $20 price difference between them. Lume pigs in the audience today will no doubt be attracted to the 3 full lume dials. You can't argue with the value of a full lume dial watch for just over $200. The lume itself is okay, if not spectacular. It looks great initially, but it does fade a bit towards the end of my test. At least the hands on both different versions are still fairly visible. On wrist, there are no nasty surprises. Like I said, I think 41.5 is a good size for a chrono. You know, there are plenty of chronos on the market at 38 or even smaller, but it's always a challenge not to make them look crushed, overcrowded and illegible. As discussed, Revelot also have the added challenge that comes with putting 4 or 5 different colours onto a dial, but the extra space afforded by the bigger diameter gives everything just a little bit of room to breathe. I actually think the proportions of the registers, the indices, the outer minute track, the logo are pretty much spot on. The whole thing just looks really nicely balanced while still maintaining a fair degree of legibility. The strap may not be handcrafted by virgins in the Swiss Jura Mountains, but it's pretty comfy with that soft backing, and the meaty buckle does balance out the head of the watch nicely. If I pull further back for perspective, those big hands do their best to remain visible. Obviously some of the colours like the panda are going to be easier to read, whereas the darker dials are going to be a little bit less legible. You can get a pretty good gauge of the relative legibility by looking at the photos on their website. Of the two that I was sent, it's probably the bonfire that is the more legible because of those big hands and because of the colour match centre section of those two big hands. Alright, moans and niggles. To be honest, there's not a lot to complain about today with these, especially with the prices starting at under $200 as they do with this one. You do have to add postage on top of that, anywhere between 10 and 25 US dollars, Kevin says, depending on where you are in the world, so do factor that into your thinking. Numbers of some of the variants are really quite limited, so you might end up not being able to buy the one you wanted, which is always frustrating. And the strap, as discussed, does rather betray the tight budget a little. It smells a bit plasticky and you can see the leather is already stretching around those perforations, but it's by no means the worst I've seen compared to some of those hideous leather straps you can get on AliExpress watches. Which brings me back to the point I alluded to earlier on. Revelot are in this really interesting position in the market. I can't think of another micro brand doing this style of watch for $200. You can get something similar looking from Stratton, but it will cost you at least 50% more. And sure, there are plenty of chronographs by Seiko and Citizen around this price, but you'll more than likely get a basic single tick chrono, you will not get sapphire crystal, you will not get a full lume tile, you will not get a case as well made and well finished as Revelot's, and you certainly won't get the choice of colours and designs. You will, however, get a similar set of specifications on AliExpress chronographs from Pagani or somebody similar for less money than the Revelot, but you won't get the build quality and you certainly won't get an original design. Which leaves Revelot in kind of an awkward no man's land, I feel. They don't have a lot of natural competition at their price, but does that matter? Probably not. If you've been looking for an affordable motorsport style colourful chronograph, you could honestly do a lot worse than one of these for $200. If you can find anything else like it in the first place, that is. So there you have it. If this one doesn't tickle your fancy, why not check out a Stratton for more money or a Pagani for less money? Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next one.